This is CBC Vancouver News.
The Prime Minister touches down in wildfire-ravaged regions.
This is all about everyone coming together to be there for each other. That's what we're seeing from individuals. That's what we're seeing from orders of government.
The promise to support communities having to rebuild. Recovering losses after devastating wildfires.
We are open for business and certainly need people to come back.
The challenges ahead for tourism in BC's Okanagan. And a family craft passed down through the generations.
I've always been trying to catch up to where my dad's been, and finally I've been able to get there.
A Vancouver cobbler has big shoes to fill after winning the industry's highest honor. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Janella Hamilton. It's been a wildfire season unlike any other, and now even though not everyone can return home, the immediate threat in most areas has lessened, bringing some relief. Amid all this, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was in BC today visiting fire-ravaged communities. Our Brady Strachan brings us more from West Kelowna, where Trudeau was questioned about his decision to skip over other badly burned areas.
So the airport is just...
right over here.
The Prime Minister briefed by local officials on the current state of operations. Accompanied by his daughter, Ella Grace, he met with many of the men and women who have been on the front lines of the firefight.
We are going to be there for each other. That's what Canadians do. All orders of government will be there to work together to make sure the Canadians are getting through this.
And he spoke about how communities and various levels of government can work together during the crisis.
We are facing a changing world right now, changing climate.
The Prime Minister stressed the need for governments to prepare for future extreme weather events.
I've tried to get to as many places as possible, and it's also extremely important that we not interfere with ongoing exercises, ongoing work.
And he was questioned on why he is not visiting the Shuswap, where there are tensions between people defying evacuation orders to fight fires on their own. West Kelowna Fire Chief Jason Brolin says the Prime Minister's visit offered a sense of comfort.
It's fuel for my people and me. We're honored that he would come here and take a few minutes to understand what we experienced.
Pamela Mitchell brought her children to the fire hall to meet Trudeau.
I appreciate you coming to show your support.
Her husband is a West Kelowna firefighter.
Really appreciate the thanks that was given to my husband and his colleagues and all the other people who've worked very hard.
Despite the expressions of gratitude and handshakes from the Prime Minister, fire officials say their work is not yet complete, as dry weather is expected to increase fire activity again in the region. Brady Strachan, CBC News, West Kelowna.
Later in the day, the Prime Minister's visit brought him to Vancouver, where BC's record-setting wildfires served as a notable backdrop to host environmental leaders.
This is real and is being felt by Canadians from coast to coast to coast, and more extreme weather events are being felt by people, particularly the most vulnerable people, everywhere around the world.
The group, known as the Global Environment Facility, helps developing countries meet their climate goals. It aims to invest $20 billion by 2025, addressing the climate crisis, biodiversity loss, and pollution. And for the first time, members have agreed to direct 20% of that funding to Indigenous-led projects. We are beginning to get a clearer picture of the damage caused by wildfires in BC's Shuswap region. Preliminary numbers released today show about 131 homes and other structures have been destroyed by the Bush Creek East fire, and another 37 were partially damaged.
These are preliminary. There are areas that Canada Task Force 1 wasn't able to get to because of danger trees and dangerous situations and firefighting efforts in the area. So we're not sure what's exactly happening in those areas, but these are the numbers that we have at the moment.
Officials also confirmed today no lives have been lost to the fire, but residents are still being urged to stay out of the evacuation zones because there are unstable trees and down power lines and dangerous toxins from burned materials. As well, Highway 1 between Chase and Sorrento has reopened. The highway was closed since August 18th because the wildfire straddled the highway. The province says crews will continue to monitor wildfire risk and activity along the corridor. The Bush Creek East wildfire is about 41,000 hectares in size, but fire officials say with more hot, dry conditions and strong winds expected this weekend, fire behavior is expected to increase. Hundreds of firefighters are battling the blaze, along with more than 100 pieces of heavy equipment and 17 helicopters.
We have our crews back out on the ground. We have 5-unit crews working on this fire today. Again, 101 ground crew. Focusing on some of our priority areas, such as the southeast flank. They continue to work hard to tie in a guard line from the railway up to a cut block. These are priority areas for us close to communities.
The BC Wild Service says the fire is considered the province's top priority when it comes to the allocation of resources. More than 11,000 residents are still on evacuation order, with no word yet on when they can return home. In response to the fast-moving wildfires, the province limited travel to the Okanagan and Shuswap regions. Those restrictions have now been lifted, including travel to West Kelowna. As Yasmin Khanea reports, the economic impact of the natural disaster is significant, and the tourism industry says recovery will be challenging.
A smoky round of golf in West Kelowna this morning as tourism and travel officially return to the southern interior.
Now is the time to travel. We are open for business and certainly need people to come back.
The tourism industry is pleading with tourists to visit the region after they were cleared out by the province's travel ban. It was brought in on August 19th to make space for the thousands of people ordered out of their homes due to wildfires.
And it really did empty out our community, all for the reason of having to make sure that our evacuees were safe.
Days later, the ban was lifted for most cities in the Okanagan except West Kelowna, but that changed Thursday at midnight.
I want to express my deepest gratitude to everyone who canceled their plans to travel, as well as to our partners in the tourism industry for their support and for their understanding.
Restrictions lifted more than a week ahead of schedule because of favorable weather conditions, but the tourism industry fears it won't make a difference. Several hotels are way below capacity. People have made other travel plans, and big events like Ironman Canada, a triathlon in Penticton estimated to generate $15 million in business, have been canceled. It was scheduled to take place this Sunday during a month that's supposed to be one of the busiest for Okanagan businesses.
It's a very difficult time because they're just still, coming back from COVID. They're still trying to make sure that they can salvage their winter. And these weeks are important to their economic future.
The province's tourism minister says she's visiting Kelowna on Monday to meet with the tourism sector. The industry says it's still deciding what specific supports it needs from the provincial government as it looks ahead to challenging weeks and months. Yasmin Raneya, CBC News, Vancouver.
While the focus has understandably been on people fleeing wildfires, pets are also in need of special care and attention during a crisis. Veterinarian Dr. Lauren Edelman spoke to CBC's BC Today and explained why cats are especially vulnerable.
Cats are one of the main species that we see affected during wildfire season. It's really, really common to see them presenting with burns, particularly to their paw pads, ears, face, as well as respiratory issues as well, damage to their lungs, often needing oxygen therapy. And so these cats, their instinct is to find safety. And so oftentimes they're not, if they're indoor, outdoor cats, they're going to be fleeing, and then they may end up somewhere very far from home and not be able to get back with severe injuries. And so treating these cats, their burn injuries, particularly to their paws, can be very time consuming. It can take several weeks, if not months, for them to heal, requiring like monthly bandage changes, things like that. So it's really, really important if you do have a cat and you're in an at-risk area, it's a great idea to keep them inside.
Joffrey Lakes Provincial Park is one of the most popular hiking destinations in our province. But if you're planning on squeezing in a trip this summer, consider those plans called off. First Nations are shutting down access to the park until the end of September. As Yasmin Gandam reports, the closure will allow for a harvest celebration without tourist disruptions.
Known for its pristine ice blue glacier lakes, Joffrey Lakes Provincial Park attracts hikers and sightseers all summer long. Visitors have more than tripled over the last decade, and the province's free day pass system only contributed to the site's skyrocketing popularity.
There's, garbage and everything, left, and there's no real respect from a lot of people that visit sites.
Nelson says this infringes on the nation's ability to steward the land, and welcoming tourists at this time would impede on harvest celebrations, which is why the Lil'wat Nation and Naquatwa First Nation, who share the territory, say they will restrict visitor access.
Anybody and everybody that wanted to be there was there, and it was like a social media magnet that you had to be there to, and we endured, the traffic and the safety concerns about.
In 2021, the province promised to recognize First Nations stewardship in the park, a right outlined in the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. But by allowing tourist traffic to surge, Nelson says BC parks have failed to fulfill the promise of recognizing their right over the territory.
Need to have time there as well, like it was still in traditional lands, and but it's never been granted. It's never been, talked about. Even with the wildland fires, like we need a voice to be able to close them in, times of and danger and, overpopulation.
In a statement, BC Park says it was recently made aware of unanticipated circumstances at the park. BC Park says those with day passes for Friday and Saturday will not be able to access the park, and bookings for future dates are closed. It also says it will cancel and refund all backcountry camping reservations for the weekend. The two nations say the park will be closed until September 30th on National Truth and Reconciliation Day. Nelson says members of the nation will spend time on the land harvesting and hunting over the next month. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Vancouver.
And in Whistler, there's been a frightening encounter between a cyclist and a cougar that's forcing some temporary trail closures. Conservation officers say a cyclist was knocked off their bike after a cougar took a swipe at the back tire. The service says the cat initially backed off when it was frightened away, but then it returned and stalked the cyclist from a close distance for 10 to 15 minutes. Now, 9 trails above Whistler's Alpine neighborhood are closed for a week. Conservation officers are reminding people to carry bear spray in case they come face to face with wildlife.
I've always been trying to catch up to where my dad's been, and finally I've been able to get there.
A Vancouver cobbler wins a prestigious cobbling award following in his father's footsteps. We'll have that full story when we come back. Thank you for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. An international triathlon event in Edmonton is dropping the swimming portion. It comes just days before the event. As Travis McEwen reports, it's disappointing news for some triathletes.
This will be the finish line of the America's Triathlon Cup on Saturday. Usually nearby Horlack Park hosts the World Triathlon races, but with the renovations there, this is the current site.
It doesn't have the big international broadcast and television. With trying a new site and a new venue and especially a new swim course, we thought it was prudent to sort of take a couple steps back and grow into a larger event with this new venue.
And one thing that was exciting for organizers and triathletes, well, a swim in the North Saskatchewan River as part of the event. However, there's been a lot of tests, but the most recent one wasn't up to standards.
Our understanding is because of the rain and the heavy rain we've been having and the conditions this year for the North Saskatchewan, we just haven't been able to hit those quality standards.
So organizers have switched it to a duathlon, which means competitors run, bike, and run again.
You train a lot, then you prepare your swimming and the running and the biking.
Some participating triathletes are disappointed they won't get to swim in the river as built.
I wish they would have prepared like an alternative. For example, you can swim, and this is something they do in many countries worldwide. They have like this option that you can do it in the swimming pool. So I know it takes more preparation and stuff, but they could have done it. We could have done it. For example, there's like the swimming pool. There's like a couple of swimming pools right there.
Organizers will look at the possibility of giving the river another shot next year, or possibly pausing the event and not taking the risk of the swim portion getting caught in the current. Travis McEwen, CBC News, Edmonton.
It used to end right next to the Trans-Canada Highway on the eastbound bend just after Lac des Arcs. Not safe, says Derek Ryder with Friends of Kananaskis Country.
Ride back along the shoulder, the possibility of dropping rocks down. So it was actually at risk of being decommissioned because there was no safe way that Alberta Transportation was going to allow it.
Online, it's described as scary and hairy, probably why mountain bikers love it. Justin De Oliveira is the president of the Canmore Area Mountain Bike Association.
It's truly a unique trail for this area, and I would say, beyond this area as well. People come to this area just to ride Razor's Edge. The rock slab you get on sort of the final part of the descent is really unique. You don't see that a whole lot of places. And mountain bikers love riding rock slabs, so that's why it's so cherished. It's really a crown jewel of the Bow Valley. So to lose a trail like that really would have been a shame.
Legitimizing unsanctioned trails is tough. Environmental concerns, rules, a host of landowners. And there's getting the plan right with the province, rerouting and building Razor's Edge. It all took a decade.
There were over 40 volunteer days. There was over 200 volunteers involved. There was over 1,500 volunteer hours building the connector trail from here to the original trail.
Signs went up in July. Now the Double Diamond is the toughest sanctioned loop in the Bow Valley.
A Vancouver cobbler has won North America's top honor for shoe repair. And as Rafferty Baker reports, he's following closely in his father's footsteps.
They're, funny enough, vintage Nike baby shoes. And I believe they're about 30 years old or so.
Cobbler Patrick Nydam is working on a bit of a unique job. A customer brought in an old pair of baby shoes that his daughter had worn.
And now his daughter is having a baby. And so now we're going to rebuild them so her baby can use these shoes.
The repair is filled with sentiment and fitting for Nydam, who has been filling his own father's shoes in a way. He's the fourth generation in his family to pick up the trade, and he's taken over the shop from his father, Ronald Nydam.
I could retire if I wanted to, but I like to do it still. And as long as I'm useful to Pat and he can use my help, then I'll be around to help him out and do some shoes.
The pair take their job seriously, and the quality of their work has now earned them both North America's top cobbling trophy, the Grand Silver Cup, which is awarded every 2 years. Ronald won in 2019.
I've always been trying to catch up to where my dad's been, and finally I've been able to get there.
His Grand Silver Cup victory is yet another way he's managed to fill his father's shoes.
It was a good win, yes. Tight but good.
So these are the shoes that I won with. You can see right over here. The goal of the competition is to repair one shoe out of a pair that's already heavily worn. And the one shoe you're supposed to make look as close to out-of-the-box factory condition as possible and leave the other one as is. And that's how they judge it.
It's fine shoe repair, the highest possible standards. Craftsmanship that the Nydams bring to all their work, whether it's repairing rock climbing shoes, work boots, or in Vancouver.
I would say 90% of our work are walk-in customers from Vancouver, and that would be definitely Blundstones, Birkenstocks, main category for sure.
Even when he's rebuilding vintage Nike baby shoes, Patrick does the best possible job he can do. He has an 8-month-old son who would probably fit these sneakers. Patrick says it's obviously far too early to say whether he'll become the 5th generation to become a cobbler. And Ronald is ambivalent about the prospect, saying he's happy with whatever career his grandson chooses. But it could be good for business.
It would be a good marketing thing to say I'm 5th generation.
In any case, in a few years, there's a part-time job sweeping a shoe repair shop floor, waiting for the next generation of Nydams. Rafferty Baker, CBC News, Vancouver.
Here we have a beautiful look at a sunset this evening from Long Beach Lodge in Tofino, one of my favorite places to visit in BC and somewhere I've created a lot of great memories this past summer. Darius will have your full forecast coming up next.
It's hard to believe. Just 4 days ago, this was a home and this was a neighborhood. At the southeastern edge of Kelowna, more than 244 houses are totally destroyed. Thursday night, flames crept over the city limits. 24 hours later, entire streets were engulfed. Fire crews were totally overwhelmed, helpless to do much about it until last night.
All things considered, we had a relatively good day yesterday on the fire line across the southern part of the province.
The winds that were pushing the flames toward the city finally died down. Still, the fire covers nearly 200 square kilometers. It's far from under control.
This is far from over. Until we get a significant amount of rain, the potential for extreme fire behavior still exists.
The burnout areas are considered extremely dangerous. It could be days before evacuees go home. The fight is getting personal. 3 Kelowna firefighters have lost their homes. This firefighter almost lost his life when his group got trapped on Friday night.
Even with all the resources, all the efforts being thrown at this fire, one hard fact remains. BC is bone dry. Fire officials say they need at least 5 days of rain to get all the province's forest fires under control. The problem here in Kelowna, there's no rain in the forecast. Diana?
All right, Cameron, thank you. We'll check in with you again later in the program. The Prime Minister saw for himself the devastation in Kelowna. He had a bird's eye view today of the fires, a chance for him to assess the kind of response needed from the federal government.
The Prime Minister arrived in Kelowna after changing his plans this weekend. He was touring the far north. BC's Premier, Gordon Campbell, met him at the airport. Within minutes, Chrétien was airborne again, this time aboard a Canadian Forces helicopter. What he saw from the air was a fire that so far has burned almost 20,000 hectares of land and has destroyed at least $100 million in real estate. After an hour in the air, the Prime Minister visited several ad hoc evacuation centers, thanking volunteers and trying to provide comfort to several of the hundreds who have lost their homes. From there, it was on to the Emergency Operations Center to meet some of those worn-out firefighters.
You go ahead, you take it back from me.
The real devastation, we flew over, we saw one house standing, a dozen around not standing, and, amazingly big space of land that the fire had destroyed completely. But what impressed me is the courage of the people that we've met.
As for who will pay for the cleanup and rebuilding, the Prime Minister says there's a plan.
Money, when we have the disaster, we don't say we don't have the money. We have to face that reality, and what will qualify, and the government will have to find the money.
No one is even trying to assess the cost of damage at this point. Hundreds of homes have been lost. Add to that the $6 million a day to fight the fires, $150 million so far, with no end.
We're sharing really important information with the public, and I feel like this is exactly what our job is, especially as the public broadcaster, especially in morning radio. That's incredibly important.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Support sustainable agriculture and celebrate local food with Margaret Gallagher at Feast of Fields. Enjoy the Gourmet Harvest Festival at the Stable Harvest Farms on September 10th. Tickets at farmfolkcityfolk.ca. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Well, a little bit of smoke in the skies today and heading into the weekend. I'm curious as to know what does the forecast have in store for us, Darius?
More smoke, unfortunately, but I'll get to that in a sec. For now, let's talk about the temperatures. They are climbing. We did see temperatures come up already today. These were the highs that we saw through the southern interior, and as you can see, we did see them climb. We're around seasonal now. By tomorrow, we're going to see those temperatures jump up even more, back into the 30s, putting us at risk of some really extreme fire behavior again. I don't think it's going to be like it was last Friday. It should be fairly manageable as long as the winds do stay down, because we already have a lot of available fuels. This shouldn't do too much more to dry them out because they're already extremely dry because of the drought situation that we've been in. Looking ahead to next week, we do have a bit of good news in the forecast. We had that little pulse of moisture through the southern interior, just a really sporadic, unusual little bit of moisture that snuck under the ridge of high pressure, but heading into next week, we get a real proper shower. We have to get through the weekend, which is going to be pretty dry, and then by Monday, we see that first little bit of moisture come in as the high pressure moves into Alberta, and we have a low sneak its way in, bringing some moisture to the coast first, and then it sort of moves its way over, and then the whole interior, southern interior, should get a good soaking heading into Wednesday as well. Just lots of moisture moving through the area. By Thursday, we'll dry up again, but it should be some really good news in terms of bringing our fire danger, our fire behavior, back to normal or below normal levels. So very good news there. In terms of smoke, tomorrow we're looking still quite smoky in Vancouver and very smoky in the southern interior. Sunday, we look our smokiest. You can see here, really, really smoky on the south coast. So just be cautious when you're going outside tomorrow and into Sunday. And then we see that clearing pattern move up through the interior tomorrow. They'll be totally clear and sunny on Sunday. And here in Vancouver, we see something similar. Lower temperatures, but high for Vancouver by the water. Very smoky conditions. And then we see that rain come in and flush some of that smoke away.
Definitely to take some precautions when it comes to that smoke and that heat. Thank you so much, Darius.
Thank you.
A new children's book about orcas aims to help readers connect with Indigenous language and culture using fun facts about killer whales. We spoke to the authors about what it means to foster connection through traditional language.
My name is David Dick. I'm the Southern Resident Killer Whale Senior Manager. This is our book, The Kathala Mission, The Introduction. This is a children's storybook, but also for others to read and learn about the different killer whales that transit throughout the Pacific Ocean and throughout the Southern Gulf Islands. It's the first of many short story books being developed by our Quintilian Wasanish Marine Guardians program. Our goal is to share information and stories from our Wasanish knowledge holders about the orcas or killer whales using words in the Sinchothan language. Sinchothan is Saanich dialect, and inside the book, on every single page, there's only a single word in Sinchothan. And so people get an idea of how to speak Sinchothan, but in a very beginning way. And then simple facts that talk about both the southern resident killer whales, the bigs, also known as the transients, and then a brief information about the offshores. And also kind of like a fun facts that are kind of cartoony. So we use a lot of cartoons, but then we also use our guardians and pictures of us that we transform into cartoon figures. It's just the beginning steps of how we as First Nations people wanting to share who we are by using our traditional languages.
That is your late news for this Friday. Thank you so much for watching. For news anytime, you can download our CBC Gem app or visit our website, cbc.ca/bc. Have a great night.